Did you
Once
ever
again,
get
I'd like to
really-
welcome all of you back. I hope you got an opportunity to network and get to know a little better about each other. I'd now like to request all those of you at the back end of the hall to please join us. Take the first few tables, please. The Microsoft workshop, Microsoft Ventures workshop has already begun in the Mumtaz Hall. In this hall, we'd like to take forward our session and our panel discussion on getting funds, how finance helps, and why you must secure it. I'd really like to request our guests at the back end of the hall to please take their seats. We're about to introduce our panel chair and our panelists. Our guests at the back end of the hall, may I request you to please take your seats. Our next panel discussion is going to be a very interactive session indeed. We'll begin with the panel discussion led by an open house for about 10 to 15 minutes. I'd now like to request all of you to put your hands together as I invite on stage our panel chair, Mr. Mohit Saraf, a senior partner, Luthra & Luthra. Let's put our hands together as Mr. Saraf joins us on stage. I'm sure the tea has given us more energy than this, so really, let's put our hands together for him. Thank you for joining us, sir, and may I request you to please introduce our panelists and take the proceedings.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very interesting session. I think we all try to do something innovative, and sometimes we can't get to the end of the tunnel because we don't have finance. And therefore, this session is so important. The timing of the session is so important, particularly when we are trying to do something with our great ideas. Let me actually introduce the panel first. So I would like to invite on stage Mr. Dinesh Shahara. He is the founder and managing director of Ruchi Soya. Please come in, sir. This is a very important company. I think I want to talk a little bit about him. This is a company in an FMCG space and also in oilseed space. It's one of the largest oilseed company in this country. And you can imagine that in early 90s, very few companies in India were listed. His company got listed on the stock exchange in 1986. And actually, if you look at 2001 to 2014, from the top line of 250 crores, he is now at 25,000 crores. So that is Mr. Dinesh Shahara. Then we have a very interesting, I think like Dr. Trehan, Dr. Mukesh Batra, again a technician, and he is actually, what is important is that being a doctor and being an entrepreneur, that's the most important part. From one clinic, he took his business to 163 clinics. He's got a top line of almost 150 crores. And the most important part is that all this is done not with debt, not raising debt, not with equity dilution, but internal accrual. So that's a very important part that if you get your story right, how do you scale it? And we will talk about is whether a debt raising is a great idea or equity dilution is a great idea or none of the two is a great idea, and we'll talk about that a little later. And then we have Mr. Mittal, H.K. Mittal. I think he is so very important, particularly I think in this country where we find more roadblocks. I think we heard Dr. Trehan, he talked about the cultural issues in the country, but also I think there are a lot of roadblocks for growth. And I think that's also a part of our culture. And particularly in that environment, being an alumni of IIM Ahmedabad, being with government for last 20 years, and really working on the innovation, I think commercialization of innovative techniques. And he's worked on technology, really largely technology, commercializing technology, and I would say he's one of the big masiha, I think, and now we have a government which is trying to see how we can let people grow and people facilitate, but he's been at it for 20 years. So that is really our panel.
So we also have Mr. Sushil Manoth, who's joined us.
And we have Sushil Manoth. He is the managing director, the chairman and managing director of Bank of Maharashtra. The good part, I think he has really been in banking side for last 25, 30 years. For last 1.5 years, he's been the managing director of Bank of Maharashtra. Before that, he was an executive director of IDBI. He's set up the capital market division of IDBI, which is a very, very important, the merchant banking division of IDBI. In interim, he was also the managing director, the chairman and managing director of SIDBI. And we understand the role which SIDBI has played in this type of a forum. So I think we have a very, very interesting panel. And what we should try to do is, the way we will try to take it forward is that I was looking at the numbers, and maybe we can start that in any country, I think people have ideas, but you need to have a platform and you need to have an enabling environment. I think that's the more important part is. One is the control part which Dr. Trehan spoke, and that we will get into at some stage. But I think the most important part is, how is the enabling environment? Does it help people to go to the next level? And one of the key thought and the key reason people don't get there is that they have not been able to raise finance. And that's a very important, because I think raising finance is very, very important. But raising the right finance is also very important. Because if you see today, when you look at a lot of these companies in 2010-11, these were the growth companies, the infrastructure companies. And now they are into a serious debt restructuring. So raising a lot of finance, but without a discipline, I think can get us in a different problem. So raising the right finance, the right equity and debt mixture, that is so important. And also the timing of finance. I think that's a very, very important. If you raise finance way too early and the money is sitting in your balance sheet, because money is expensive, whether it's debt, it accrues interest, or whether it's equity, then it has got a much higher internal rate of return. But if the money is sitting in your balance sheet and doing nothing, then that's a big bad story. If you remember a few months back, a year back, Facebook raised money, and everybody thought, and global investor community thought, that they have ripped off everybody, they've taken at a very high valuation, and people will lose money. But if you think, and same thing Alibaba did, that it was an exorbitant valuation, nobody will make money. There was a lot of stories. But if you see the learning in that whole thing, they raised the money at a high valuation, but they raised it for the right purpose. They raised it for inorganic growth. And as long as they knew what they were doing, they were using the money, today the stock is cheap. And that's the critical question. When do you raise money? What type of money do you raise? And what is the purpose of the money? If the money is doing nothing, I think right now there are so many PSUs which have a lot of money sitting in their balance sheet, and the market does not reward that, because that money is doing nothing. So that's the critical question. I think with that, I think I should go to Sushil sir. I think the very important part, if you look at the venture capital funding, if you look at the Silicon Valley, almost 10-15% of the money really is raised from debt. Unlike in India. In India, if you look at it, the venture capital debt is around between 3 and 3.5%. And since you've been the guru of, I would say, investment banking at IDBI and now the banker, so if you can tell us, where is the problem?
See, in India, venture debt is of course very low, as you said, that as compared to the worldwide figures. But then there are of course some reasons for it also. But let me also begin by saying that, see, a good number of MSMEs, they either don't start out or they face problems midway because of lack of timely finance. As you said, because of timely availability of finance is one of the major causes, and therefore you must see to it that you secure this finance before you start your commercial production. Especially when you are at the commercial production stage, you must secure this. This we can discuss in, say, two parts. One can be obtaining finance from the banking system, and another important actually is obtaining the adequate finance from the banking system. Actually, both the things are equally important in terms of taking forward. whether it is for proven technologies or new technologies. Of course, new technologies will have some more issues from the banking side. Today, the banking system has fairly good policies and schemes for the MSME sector, which can take care of most of the needs of the MSME sector. But, well, there is a big but here on it is, the question here is that half the applications or proposals are rejected at the branch stage when they come over for MSME financing. And the reason, a very simple reason is because lack of poor project preparation. The person, see, when you want to become an entrepreneur, most of the times you are on your own, when you want to be on your own, but you have to be so much on your own that you have no other support. Nobody teaches you entrepreneurship in schools or colleges or anywhere. So because of that, your project preparation is very poor. Now you need to do three things at least in your project preparation to be able to get a good look from the banker on your project report. One is, I can say the first will be cost of project and means of finance, that you should be able to give it out very clearly. The second will be how do you get the cash flows on it. And the third is the marketing arrangements. If these three things you are able to do it, then we can say that yes, definitely you will get a more detailed look from the banker in terms of financing of the proposals. But now comes the second question. Bankers are conservative people. Even after you have given all the information, they will ask you for some collateral security. Reason, they want it as a fallback option. If because you don't have a track record or there are no other things available, so you would like a collateral security. And if somebody can give, say, his residential house, that is very much welcome by the bankers in terms of, say, because that also shows the confidence you have in the project, which you are doing it. But there is a ray of hope here also, that there is a very good scheme, a wonderful scheme available from the government, that is Credit Guarantee Trust for Micro and Small Enterprises. This trust stands guarantee for all those loans where people are not able to give collaterals at all. No collaterals, no third-party guarantees, then you can take a guarantee from this trust by paying a particular premium. A 1% per annum premium is to be paid to this trust, and this trust will stand guarantee for you in terms of getting the loans. And this scheme is available across all the banks, including my bank, and everywhere this scheme is available. So it is very much possible to get debt even without any collaterals available, number one. And number two, this is better than the venture debt financing which we have in the US, because where there is 2 to 3% higher interest and there is some convertibility clause is also there. Here there is no convertibility clause, there is no interference in management, so this is much better to that extent for the people. And this scheme covers up to rupees 1 crore of total loan. That means term loans plus working capital requirements. And that is almost taking care of almost 80% of the new ventures or new startups. Up to 1 crore of loan is taken up as a part of credit guarantee scheme. In fact, there are talks underway that we may be enhancing this scheme from 1 crore to say 2 crores in the near future. So it is possible. And maybe in the second round discussion, we can even discuss on how to get adequate finance. Maybe that we can give it up for the second round once we may start.
Sushil, let me ask you a question. I think the key question is, you said few things. One is important is that a lot of us, which is setting up businesses, we've really never done a project report. And that is something, what you rightly said, is that needs a lot of professional help before it gets to him. I think that's the one important takeaway here. But I think one important thing which I'll use...
And there I'll just say one more thing. See, there is, looking at the same problem, when I was a chairman of SIDBI, what we did is we devised we have launched a website, www.smallb.in, which tells you how to set up a small business. It gives you all how to evaluate business opportunities, how to prepare a project report, how to even look at setting up a company or a partnership firm or a limited liability partnership or any other thing, plus the banking schemes which are available and the government incentive schemes. So all these things are brought about in that so that it can give you that information gap can be at least covered from that area.
That's a very fair point. But I think I'm just getting back into really the type of businesses we are talking really is innovation. Technology, which is typically very asset-light business. It's an idea, and I think the funding is required much prior to the real cash flows. And typically, if you look at the banking system in India, is that they look at history of business, what have the promoters done in last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, have they paid all the money in time or not time? So that is the key thing they look at it. And you use the word that bankers are very conservative. Okay. I would feel, if you look at anybody and say, hey, bankers are conservative, probably equity investors are more conservative. I think anybody, bankers at least have security. Equity investors have only promises and nothing else. So if you think about it, I'm just throwing a question to a different level, is because if you look at it last particularly last 3 years when we've had global meltdown, if you look at it, and you look at equity raising in this country, if you look at the Reliance Group, you look at the Tatas, you look at the Birlas, virtually there's been no equity raising by them. They have not been able to raise money. The people who have really raised money are 30-year young boys, Flipkarts, the Snapdeals. So I would say, if you look at it, really is the equity is far conservative, I would say, typically, than debt. And they are putting money with young people without a track record, without cash flows, without security on asset, and we are all trying to create a more enabling environment. I would say definitely, I think whether it's an RBI issue or the Indian banking issue, I think this is really something which we need to think about it and create more enabling environment.
Okay, let me say, see what is banking? Banking is basically custodian of the depositor's money. So the banking cannot actually go in, you cannot expect bankers to be into the venture capital space. Of course, there are separate schemes available for it. Bankers are the part of the debt side, whereas equity side, there are different players into it. The question, of course, is that you don't have a market available for the equity raising, and that is where these issues are there. But if you are able to make it in some way, there are certain schemes available. Number one, SIDBI has also a scheme where you give venture capital, as well as you give a risk capital also. Risk capital means that it is being given without any collaterals, and it is also, it has a little higher interest rates onto that is also available. But more importantly now, it's for the worldwide, you will see, whether it is US or Israel, they are very good examples where venture capital kind of funding is done basically from the government sources. And that is why government, I think, when we have been taking it up with the government for the last few years, and in the government now, they have come up with the 10,000 crore venture capital scheme also. That is there, which will act as a fund of funds, and finally more private sector venture funds will come up, who will then be able to give this venture capital money to the individual investors. So I think that could be a one way of channelizing formal sources of money for venture capital to the enterprise.
So Sushil takes us to Mr. Mittal. So I think that's the 10,000 crore. This was announced last year budget, and that is a very interesting thing, that this is like a sovereign fund. Most countries have sovereign fund, and this goes to some sort of a, not to the core of helping people to go to the next level, entrepreneurs, but at least service industry, commodity industry, particularly supplies to SMEs. Mr. Mittal, if you can, actually, I've just got too many doctors on the on the dais. So, Mr. Mittal, if you can tell me, really, will that change?
Yes, certainly that will change. See, this announcement of 10,000 crores was made in the last year's budget, and the next budget is only few hours away. So the only request I will have is that let's wait for those few hours. There's something that might come through in the next budget in terms of operationalizing the 10,000 crores. I don't want to jump the gun and tell you what it could be, but that's where I would like to leave at that. See, if you really look at institutions which are working in India or in some of those developed economies, like we keep talking about Silicon Valley, Israel, or countries like that. Let me first of all say that it's difficult to raise funds in India comparatively when you talk about Silicon Valley. Let me give you a few reasons for that, why it is. I have a chance to work with Silicon Valley institutions like the TiE Silicon Valley, Stanford University, on promoting joint ventures or entrepreneurs who have one unit here in India and one unit here in US. Let me share with you a few reasons. See, one thing which the Indian entrepreneur generally, we work with a lot of passion, but less of reason. We work with a lot of heart, but less of mind. What I mean to say is that our business plans are normally not as good as what you see the business plans in the Silicon Valley. I am on the Indo-US Endowment Board, where we look at proposals from both the US side as well as the India side. The completeness of a proposal, all the angles. Let me ask you a question. How many of you belong to the science and technology background here? Either engineers or science graduates? Quite a few of you. What, in my long career of about 25 years, what I have noticed, these innovators, these scientists, and these technocrats is that we are very good at technology. When it comes to technology, we are a bundle of energy. We jump, we dance, we do everything in terms of technology. I have actually seen companies where the CMD of a 700 crore company is an innovator. He jumps, he's a bundle of energy, he does when the technical presentation is there. But when it comes to finance, he doesn't sit in the same room. He lets his general manager finance make the presentation. The shift of identity from an innovator to an entrepreneur to a businessman is something which is required and which takes a long time in case of we people here in India. The other issue is that we want to do it single-handedly. I can manage everything. We don't believe in that teamwork. If we don't put in that team where you have multiple expertise, different expertise, which is there as part of the original team or the complemented team, we tend to falter. Yes, the last thing which I would like to say is that the environment is much better in some of these economies. To give you a small example, we took a batch of about 15 innovators to Silicon Valley. They were taken to a law firm, huge office, where here we have law firms mainly 2-3 room or a single room office kind of a huge building of a law firm. And the moment they enter there, and they are told, we will provide you all services free of cost. All services free of cost. Our entrepreneurs were very intrigued. They asked, why are you giving us all this free? They said, we want you to grow and we can actually charge you when you are at that stage. That kind of an ecosystem, that environment of mutual trust, waiting for the returns to come, unfortunately doesn't exist here. So these are some of the issues which we face in the Indian context versus some of these developed economies.
I think very interesting point. I think the ecosystem, the supportive ecosystem, and I think what very interesting point which Mr. Mittal mentioned is moving from a technician to a manager. I think that's a very important, that's a different mindset. Like you mentioned about a law firm. I started with this law firm. I was a third lawyer, and now we are 260 lawyers in a matter of 15 years. So really, from a good lawyer to be a good manager means a lot. And therefore, what could be most appropriate than Dr. Batra? That actually, if you think about it, that being a good doctor, passionate about homeopathy, taking it globally, I would say he's made a lot of effort to take it to Southeast Asia, in Africa region, in Mauritius, and now actually he's got a 163 clinics, which is a very significant, and got a revenue of like 150 crores?
Yeah, 200 crores.
200 crores. So I think he just added that 50 crores in the last few months. So 200 crore revenue and run by a technician who's actually converted himself as an entrepreneur, which is a very important part. So I think if you can actually share your thought process, how did you get to this level? At what stage that you change your thought process from a doctor to a manager, to a CEO, to a CFO, to an HR person? Retaining is equally important. So I think if you can walk people here, that will be very interesting for people because they are all trying to grow somewhere.
Well, thank you very much, Mohit. I must admit that I'm really shocked that I'm sitting on this stage because, you know, being a man of medicine, I never ever thought that I'm going to share a stage with people who are in finance, especially because I think most doctors like me actually go to medicine because we actually are very poor in mathematics. That's one of our, weakest subjects. So I'm really thrilled that I'm here. Thank you very much. I'd like to start with the way I started my company. And as a single doctor clinic, I must say that homeopathy and also medicine at that time was not very regulated and it was not institutionalized. And therefore there was very little finance that was available for a young doctor to actually establish and to grow. And I must tell you that when I started my practice, I borrowed money at 36% per annum, which was the kind of Bollywood rate at that time, and which took me 10 years to repay back my loans. And which is why I kind of vowed, therefore, that as far as possible, I would try to make a company which is a zero-debt company and try to grow through internal accruals. I'm happy to say that this has been possible today, and I'll share with you how and why. And we've now moved to 200 crores. In the next 5 years, we're going to move to 1,000 crores. And all of this we're going to do through mainly internal accruals. And because we designed and we kind of evolved a business model, I want to tell you a short story. In the early 90s, when I was looking for funds and I thought that, we should have capital to grow, a friend of mine, Mr. Deepak Parekh, who was the head of HDFC at that time, said, Doc, your proposal has come before me and I'm just signing, your loan for 50 crores. This was in the early 90s, and I couldn't dream that, we would get that kind of money. And he said, but let me warn you that, please go slow. And I realized that what he was saying was right. And therefore, lesson number one for me was that just because finance is available doesn't mean that you should take it. I think you've got to be ready for it. And that time, our efficiency, operational efficiency, was 2 clinics a year. Today, our operational efficiency is 2 clinics a week. We open 2 new clinics every week. And we today are 184 clinics as you speak. And probably by the time I get off the platform, it'll be 185. So once you've got the operational efficiency, once you can replicate it, that's when you actually start scaling up. And that's also perhaps when you should think of taking finance if at all you need it. The second thing is that people believe that franchise is a very, very strong mode and, things that, can help you to grow.
Just 1 second. I just want to add here is that what he's done really different is, one is the internal accrual bit, but he's actually moved it to an asset-light model. Doctor, if you can explain that model to people so that people can appreciate.
Yeah, so I'll come to that and first talk about, the franchisee bit, because a lot of people think that when you have 184 clinics, they must be all franchised. That's really not true. And I want to mention this, that 44 of the 184 are franchised. And that's only in Tier 3 and Tier 4 cities. And 144 are things that we own, run, manage ourselves, and even we provide doctors to franchisee clinics. We moved into franchisee only 1.5 years ago, and we moved only after we were very, very sure that we have a very strong business model, and that all our systems and processes were in place, to a T, and we could actually get 100% operational efficiency. And it's only after we did that, and after we launched our 100 clinic, after 10 years, we actually then went for a franchisee model. So here, my advice to young entrepreneurs is that franchisee is a good way to grow. It's a very fast way to grow. But do it at the right time. And do it when you've kind of replicated a model which is worth franchising. Otherwise, you will erode your brand completely. What you built up over the years, you can also get brand erosion because the brand experience in different outlets can be very, very different. So this is the one thing that I wanted to mention. Coming back to an asset-light model, how do you grow through internal accruals? I think perhaps in the early 90s, we started, package payments for treatments. And so in a way, I can say we have been innovators in crowdfunding, because 175,000 of our patients are crowdfunding us because they pay us fees in advance for the whole year for the treatment that they undertake. And we put that money back into the business and we keep growing. So we don't need any external things. So the more customers we have, the more clients we have, the more we grow. That's point number one. Point number two is that we do have asset-based, clinics as well, where we own them. But that's roughly around 33%. So we have a very, very clear formula in our mind. And the rest of it that we go for 9-year lease, which is a long-term lease, and with all the property that we have, because the biggest expense that you have in terms of capital in this business, in clinics, is the real estate. So how do you break that? And therefore we go for a 9-year lease, and we have a buyback arrangement. So what really happens is, we've got examples, for example, for a clinic in Pune, where within 1 year we were to buy back the property. So we again are earning from the business, and we are then also creating the asset. And that's how we then, over a period of time, also become a strong asset-based company without any finance. So just to give you some idea that, we've evolved a kind of a business model where we kind of break even in our operating expenses in the first 2.5 months of operation. And we recover our ROI, as we call it, on whatever assets that we have put in and the money that we put into assets in a maximum period of 1 to 1.5 years time.
So Dr. Batra, actually what you said is really ties up with Mr. Mittal's thought process. Is that you have to have a right balance of innovation, passion, and detailing. I think that's what you rightly said, is that sometimes detailing is missing and financial discipline is missing, that like you've seen in a lot of real estate companies right now, you talked about 36%. In 2014, they are raising at 36% and servicing debt. So they are in a debt trap. the market capitalization has eroded. That's happened with infrastructure companies, that has happened with real estate companies. So I think that is there. And really at the end of the day, somebody has to bring the right balance. When to raise money, how much to raise, and whether you can service the debt or you have a big game plan.
That's right.
I think a lot of us believe that we can service the debt. And I think sometimes when we are looking at a business proposal, we always believe that God is there and God is going to help make us do the right decision. And then we just put too much of burden on the poor God. So I think we go back to Mr. Mittal's thought process that detailing is very important. I think Sushil also said that the proposal has to be into a lot of detail. We have to look at it, how does it make sense, the cash flows. I think those are very important, because if we have to go to the next level, we need finance, which is very, very important. And therefore, we have to also be equally disciplined. I think, sir, I have to ask you a very interesting question. Actually, I was doing a little bit due diligence on Ruchi Soya. He's the founder, managing director of this company. This company in 2001 top line was 250 crores. And today it is 25,000 crores. Is one of the leaders in FMCG, edible oil, agriculture product. Very, very interesting growth. But then I looked at the equity dilution, because I'm a lawyer, private equity lawyer. So I have to see what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So I said, hey, he moved to a different level. So then I started looking at the equity dilution. And I found that virtually he's diluted his equity from 19 crore to 66 crore. That means he's raised equity, and he's not diluted that much. But what I'm saying is that he's raised equity from 19 crore to 66 crores. But in the same period, his debt level in the company had moved up from 125 crores to 250 crores, 2,500 crores. So really what I want to understand from you is that obviously you have grown, and I think you are one of the first significant company to be listed in stock exchange in 1986, and you have significantly grown. So if you can explain to the audience here, is the mix of equity raising and debt raising, what are the thumb rules they should keep in mind? I think we've heard the rules here, but maybe from your experience, because your business is a little bit more asset heavy.
Let me just mention to you that yes, it's true that we grew. Ruchi Soya, from the day one, they have been growing. And in 86, we were a 6 crores company. We are now 30,000 crores company. The growth was the key for our business, and we believe in leadership and dominance. So whatever the field we are in, we are almost number one position. We are India's largest food and agribusiness company. Our brands, Nutrila is over 50% market share in the food category. Ruchi Gold is India's #1 palm oil brand. So we have a complete dominant position wherever we are in. We are in the palm plantation where we are #1. So now the equity dilution which you mentioned, we believe that apart from giving reasonable dividends, entire the profits have been thrown back in the company itself. So while you said that our debt increased 20 times, you have not taken into account the net worth. Mm-hmm. So net worth also grew almost 8 times.
Yes.
So a net worth from that period which you mentioned is almost over 300 crores, which is now almost close to over 2,000 crores. So we have two sorts of debts. One is long-term debt, which are asset-backed, and another is working capital, which is short-term. So we believe that in a large growth, our EBITDA margins are 4 to 5%, and globally, this business's net margins are lower. So we believe that long-term debt needs to be as low as possible. So if you look at our last balance sheet, it is 1:1.25 asset to equity to assets, and the short-term debts, which is working capital, they are basis this. So that's the situation. But my advice to the entrepreneurs is that it will be good that in a business which is asset base, you should have as strong capital base, and you should be very conservative in terms of leveraging. So in case of any large growth plan, you should have a backup plan. So I think we also believe in that, and growth should be the key, because that allows you to be competitive and remain in the business, and of course dominance rewards you suitably.
I think we don't have anybody on the private equity or venture capital side, and I actually do a lot of deals on that. I actually invested, I helped Carlyle invest in MedCity, Dr. Trehan's company. So from that perspective, I thought maybe I'll talk a little bit about private equity so that we at least cover all the key areas. There are almost 200 private equity funds in India, and annually in last 10 years, they have invested almost close to $8 to $9 billion annually in this country. So that's a significant amount of money. And I would say really what we've heard is that venture fund, venture debt fund, bank funding at initial stage is not that available. And again, in the venture capital funds or the private equity fund, there are people who actually invest 1 crore, 2 crores. They do take certain portion of equity. They also talk about structured returns to make sure that their downside is protected. They also, like I remember Dr. Batra writing in one of the interviews saying that we didn't want to dilute ourselves. So it often leads to dilution. But also they do bring a lot of positivities. I think that's a very important part. I would say if you look at if you look at some of the companies where there are private equity investments, suddenly you realize that the PE multiple which market gives them is much higher than anybody else. Because they become predictable, they have more processes, as we just heard, that they have processes, they have predictable processes, and there's a lot of transparency, there's a lot of reporting required, related party transactions between family members go off the radar. So I think they also bring a lot of value. That doesn't mean that you should do a deal with your eyes closed, but I think that's a very important part. But with that in mind, I think we should take some questions from the floor. We've just got a few more minutes. And anybody who wants to ask any question, please feel free to raise your hand, introduce yourself, and ask a question to any particular panelist or generally. Mr. Mike, please.
Yeah, hi, my name is Akhilesh. I run an interior architecture firm. We also manufacture furniture for various corporates. And I'm going through a stage where we really need a lot of funding to upscale our operations. So my question is, how do I already have term loan CC from banks. But to really grow big, I'm really thinking of getting some VC or some angel investor into my organization. But I have no clues as of how much really that dilution kind of thing, how much ownership dilution is going to happen, how much big bosses will be sitting on my head. How do I really go about that? That's the question. I really wonder, we don't have any VC sitting here who can answer this question, but if you can help us, since this forum is about that.
I think definitely, I think I'm probably helping my own cause. You definitely need a good lawyer. Having said that.
No, also that is there. See what happens. See, when you want to grow from one level stage to a much higher stage, you need both debt and equity. Debt is easily available because now you have some track record. But the equity part which is missing, for that you need to actually go to a venture capital. And I will suggest there are several venture capital funds actually in India today. And if you want somebody for focus for the SME sector, because you seem to be more on the SME sector, maybe you can even look up at like the SIDBI venture capital funds. They have that. There is only a limited amount of dilution, and you can even work out. You can have even part of it as an equity and part of it as a higher cost debt or whatever you can buy back later on also at a particular rates also. So that is also possible where you don't have to do dilution today, you get the money and you take it. So hybrid structures are also available depending on case to case basis, and you should approach a venture capital fund for the equity part because that will always be available to you once you have a track record.
So SIDBI is the only option, or
no, SIDBI is one of the options I am saying. There are a large number. ICICI also has a venture capital, Axis Bank has a venture capital. There are several others. I can say large numbers of funds are there in fact in India. which are focusing a lot more now. They have started focusing on MSMEs. Earlier, you found a lot of things happening on the private equity space, which was $5 million or $10 million deals, the minimum, somewhere, and the sizes were above that. But now significantly more and more have started also coming in. Some new players have also started coming in the MSME space, where they can give you say what $2 million or $5 million or $3 million or what. No, that kind of a amount also is now getting into the financing stage for the equity.
But I think what is important is one is going to the right people.
Yes.
The other important is to do a lot of thinking. Because really what is important is when we work for private equity, what we see is everybody gets 30 proposals a day. Now what is important is that in that 5 minutes, how do you stand out? That's the critical. And I think I always tell my lawyers is that if you have to grow in life, there must be something which differentiates you with the rest of the crowd. And that's a very important part. That somebody needs to understand that you are an innovator, you got something right. If you are telling, you go to a proposal and say, hey, we have a Panchkuya road mein dukaan and we got to do this and we got to import it, that's not what will excite. Because people are not really looking at the IRR in next 2-3 years. They are not looking at if you have a bank funding at 12-13% and you're getting 18%, nobody's interested. But they want to see really upside. And therefore what is important is, can you scale the way Dr. Batra has done? That is important. Can you add something else which others have not thought through? And a lot of things in India, if you look at it, is not that we are innovators. We just copy the US model. I think whatever has succeeded there, if you copy it with a lot of intelligence, understanding that the purchasing power parity in India, understand that issue, where is the buzz? If you do that, you don't need a rocket scientist to do that. I think that you can do it very well. So I would say, talk to the right bankers, right? Talk to the right people, go to the right people. Because if you go to the wrong people, like suppose you in your business, you go to Carlyle and Blackstone, and you wasted your time and you'll get nowhere. So that's the important thing. Go to the right person. Because you actually at the end of the day, if you go to the 10 wrong person, you are so demotivated that you will never get up and think about it. It's a private equity is off my radar. So yes, please.
Very importantly, potential for scaling up is very important.
Correct.
In this kind of thing which you said. I want to focus on that.
Thank you.
Potential for scaling up and project preparation. These are the two very important things when you go to anyone and approach any venture capital.
Yes, please.
My name is Aubrey Aloysius, and I'm involved in a space service industry, not manufacturing, education. My question is directed to probably more than one person, but two questions. Number one is Mr. Mohit Saraf. Since you are in a law firm, I believe it was Mr. Mittal who mentioned a model in the US where the law firm invests in young budding entrepreneurs who then, with a vision to charge them later. Would that be a model that your organization would probably consider for entrepreneurs?
This is unfair, putting the panel against the panel.
No, absolutely. I think it's not an unfair question. I tell you one thing, for a law firm like ours, I tell you, what are the reasons, what are the things which we tell? I think when people come and my associates, my partners come and talk to me, he said, this is the guy who's called me, should we take the work? When they ask that question, and I'll give the answer, which is very straightforward. We said, my mantra is, I will do a small deal for a big guy, because I know if I do a small deal well, he'll give me all the work. I will do a big deal for a small guy. That means I believe he's a small guy, but I know that this deal is a game changer for him. So it's not a big in value, but I will not do a small deal for a small guy. That means a person who will always stay where we is. So that is what we do. So we understand. I think that we are also in a way a VC fund. We have a limited bandwidth and we look at it people. So if we find people who go to put heart and soul, they have the right business model, we feel, and they are honorable people, we will support it. We have done that to multiple companies. I think right now, I think a lot of banks, EXL, which is a large BPO company which is listed in NASDAQ, actually grew out of our office. So we've done a lot. Ratnakar Bank is another. So a lot of these companies grew out of our office where we worked. We actually invested money also. Forget about our fees. We invested money. So what I'm trying to say is that we are definitely that way. We are also similar law firm. We are 260 lawyers, unlike 2-3 lawyers in India. But what we look at is the scope of growth. Are you going to be a game changer? And that's the critical thing. That's what excites us.
Encouraging, very encouraging. Thank you. And the second one, I'll open it to anyone who would like to answer, and that is, what is there a right mix? For example, I heard about the Credit Guarantee Fund Trust, BC, whatever size, or the right people. Is there a right mix? A question that comes from Dr. Batra sharing his experience of not wanting to dilute versus, dilution and raising capital, whether it's public or private. Is there a right mix? Is there a right time? Quickly, I think since we don't have a VC, if you could just elaborate on that, maybe or anyone else.
Can I just take it? See, as far as innovators are concerned, there are a number of programs which are available where you get neither debt nor equity grant money. And in the initial stages, it's good to use those funds. Like if I have to take a commercial break for 15 seconds, let me talk to you about the Indo-US Endowment Board, where the two governments give you up to 2.5 crore of rupees as grant. And the only condition is there has to be one company in India and one company in US, and there has to be a joint venture. This is just one example. And there are many examples which are not up to 2.5 crores, 25 lakhs, 50 lakhs, which you can get on easy terms. So the cost of capital in the initial stages, if you keep it low, is going to be beneficial in the long run. So think of different things, not only debt, equity, grant, any model which keeps your cost of capital low.
Thank you, sir.
Presenting Photosynthesis Foods Private Limited. We are shortly launching our brand of stores called Chuskiyan, wherein all the beverages of the country will be served under one roof. So it's kind of a cafe which has around 30-40 varieties of tea, coffee. Not just that, it will have the beverages from different parts of the country. Say sattu from North India and Kashmiri kahwa and lassi and everything. So the concern is with my limited financial strength that I have. I'm starting off a store in Pune very soon, post Holi. But with my limited capabilities in terms of raising funds, etc., I might at best be able to do 2 or 3 stores. Now, with 2 or 3 stores at max in one city, I obviously cannot take the franchisee route because that would be too less to have a consumer brand appeal. So, how would you suggest a new a guy on the roads? What should he do? Should he be approaching banks? Should he be approaching venture caps? How should he go about it in terms of raising money for his business, especially when the aspiration is to do around 100 stores in 5 years?
I think particularly in my personal view, the type of business you're talking about won't have a long history. And also in my view, you don't have a long shelf life. This is not a business, the medical health business you can probably has a much longer shelf life. Now your business, what you're trying to do is somebody else will do it and will do quicker. And therefore you need to look at raising funding. I think bank funding, my view, will be very difficult.
Yeah, I think.
But venture capital funding, if you actually if you can do it, and I think which is very important, and I'll give you an example is, as a law firm, when we started law firm in early 90s, really law firms did not exist in India. There were only lawyers. And to get to 3 lawyer to 20 lawyer was a lot of time. We spent a lot of time doing that. From 20 to 50 was very easy, and 50 to 100 was even easier. And then it was much easier. So in my view, which is very important, and I'm going to use, because I'm putting this cap on myself and thinking about it, I said my view will be, first, get to the perfection in your business. That 3 store, make it to that thing that it is a wow effect. Then go and scale up. Because if you do it too quickly, and then you don't get your processes right, as Dr. Batra said. If you get your thought right, your processes right, and then you actually get everything written, and then you scale up, whether franchise or otherwise, then you can get anywhere. But I think in my view, you should go a little slow, make sure, because you will suddenly realize that Kava doesn't sell in Pune even once a month. Maybe that's off the shelf. And you have to do that. And that's what you have to do it, and that's you get the right mix. Because if you see McDonald's also, they have different burgers in India than what they have in US. And you have to get to that level. And that's the time. And if people who invest can see your model making sense, and sense for eternity, and this is the brand which will build, then I think you've got the model. Dr. Batra?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think you have to wait, a little bit, be a little patient, like I said earlier. I think we had the same experience, to scale up from 1 doctor to 400 doctors today. It's not easy. And like I said, I think you first need to evolve a sustainable business model. Now, when you're very confident that you got it right, that's when you should scale. And then whether you do it through franchising, whether you do it through, VCs, or whatever you want, there are many options available to you.
And dilution typically is not a bad issue. In my view, dilution is a good thing. Because today, if you look at, I was looking at the paper, that Bharti, the listed telecom company, sold a part of the share of Bharti Airtel. So everybody sells shares at the valuation. So it's nothing bad. I think you just de-risk yourself.
Yeah,
so I would say it's not a bad model, as long as you know when to raise money and what for, what purpose. And once you are able to see that the business will do far better than the hurdles of raising money. I think that's a cost-benefit analysis you have to run.
No, at this stage, you will need more money for supply chain management and brand building. Now, both these things are not in a part of a financeable part from the banking side. So, initially, you will have to start with, as you said, for equity dilution in terms of going for some venture funding. But the moment you are able to establish even for these three things, these two things, the supply chain management and the brand building, you will be able to then scale up by taking up more bank finance. Will be easily available after that. So that.
Yes.
There's a lady here.
Okay, my name is Ranjit Kulkarni, and we are into manufacturing of auto components and basically for CV commercial vehicle segment. So my question is for Sushil ji, what are the funds we manage? It's only through the bank, and now the banking sector is very organized. I agree, the project report should be the very strong. Yes, the project report is done on the basis of what are the sources of information we get. But in project report, we can consider 15 to 20% downturn or upturn. 20% variation acceptable. And we also do the CAB. And we are getting, it's an established manufacturing unit. And we are doing the expansions. So you consider the external rating crystal of existing balance sheet, existing ratio, and everything is considered. The moment in India, if you see the GDP and inflation, you see the government policies regarding free trade agreement. Now it's called safeguard. You see one Friday morning, the mining got closed, and it was not conveyed at all to the manufacturers. Now you tell me, we are in the case of the restructuring, and the market impact is of 50 to 60%. Now, how to match this ratio? Being project report, we are considering only 15 to 20% tolerance, whatever that we can cover. Now we are going for restructuring. For restructuring, they are asking to bring the capital. Okay, we have bought the capital. Now you tell me how to fund the losses. It's our private limited company. Bank is not supporting us. They are saying go to the rehabilitation. Second restructuring. So how to fund the losses? We have to run the show because we know the market is going to improve coming 2 to 1 year down the line. In 2016, it will improve. Now you tell me, I have only source of income is source of fund is bank, and other is my fixed asset liquidated. But as a norms of private limited, you cannot bring the capital unsecured loan of the directors or the family, which is a new GR is launched. Maybe you are aware of. So at this situation, bank is not supporting. Rate of interest is 17% of SBI, State Bank of India, because all ratios are disturbed. Rating is very poor. It's you can say D or maybe a C. So at this situation, to buy a time, you require the money. So what provision we should do now? And secondly, Doctor and Soya, I would like, I'm really surprised the figures what you speak now. Today you are 200 crores turnovers, down the line you reach 1000 crores turnover, and your is such a huge growth rate. So what should be the CAGR, compound annual growth rate? What should be the CAGR for standard norms, Sushil sir?
Ours is 30%.
Okay.
And that's the thing that you need to keep up if you want to really grow to that level. Because you're talking about multiples of 5. That's point number one. Point number two is, unfortunately in India, nobody likes a loser. Everybody loves winners. So I think when things are not going right, that's really when you really don't have anybody to hold hands. And I think that's really a very genuine problem that all entrepreneurs face. And I think all of us have failed. And we have failed, and then we have succeeded. So I think you have to find your own level of what you can do and how you can overcome a difficult period in your entrepreneurship life, and then overcome it, and then ultimately you'll become stronger. I think 3 things that I want to say generally for all entrepreneurs. Number one is passion is very important. And I think all of us, you know, we work with passion. कदम चूम लेती है मंजिल ही आकर अगर राही खुद अपनी हिम्मत ना हारे. And I think that's something that you should always follow and keep in mind. Because all of us have failed, and then we have succeeded. So if you work with passion, you'll get there. Second thing is, you must have operational capability to deal with growth. And the third thing is, you must have management with. Because a lot of us fail because we had not created a back office which is strong enough. We don't have professional managers. Like Sir said, we try to do everything ourselves. We don't delegate work to other people. And we don't form a core team, you know, a core strategic team, which can actually take us to the next level. So I think if you keep these three things in mind, I think you'll grow very well.
I'll give you an example. I think it's a very interesting example, and probably it'll answer. I do a lot of work. I used to do a lot of work with Vijay Mallya. So in early phase of his life, he bought Shaw Wallace, and I led that deal for him. That was a $300 million deal. ICICI Bank has funded that deal. And I virtually spent days with him trying to do the deal. The day the deal got done, within 3-4 days, the market cap of McDowell's that time, and now it's called United Spirits, that moved up by almost $1.5 billion. And I remember Dr. Mallya telling me, see, this company is free now. So I want to explain that issue to you, I think. Now, then what happened was that obviously the Kingfisher went bad, and he called me and he said, I want to really work against the bank and understand the issues. And I explained to him, I said, you know, when ICICI funded you, you didn't give them a bonus because they funded you and you made an equity return. So now, if they gave you money and your business has gone wrong, why should bank take loss? And that's an important issue. Because it's a very important bit is that when you expect a banks to take, and I'm very happy with Raghuram Rajan is doing. And again, it's an issue, that's the reason it comes to the question of dilution. Dilution at the right time may be not a bad idea because you put risk off the table. But if the business goes wrong, and if banks are going to fund it, then they are not banks, they are your equity partners. And that's not the way it's done in any civilized society. It's only done in India because in India it's still a relationship banking. It's the taxpayers' money which I think it gets spoiled with wrong business decision. And why should it be? And I think that's a new policy on NPA by Reserve Bank of India. A lot of bankers are upset about it, but I'm very happy about it. Because I feel that they have to pay, not we have to pay as a taxpayer. So that's a key question. So I would say, I think I will go back to Dr. Batra's position, is that you need to think about the model, right? You have to spend a lot of time before you raise third-party debt. And if you raise it wrongly, then you have to pay the price. Because that's the way the debt works. In India, unfortunately, though I'm a lawyer and I feel it doesn't work because our court system does not work. Otherwise, you would have big guys coming down to level earth if one bank loan goes wrong. It doesn't happen in India. Hopefully it will happen now. I would say is a fair thing. We should not blame the system. The banks should take a little bit more risk. They should support innovators. They should support technology once they see the good business model. That's a good thing. But if they support and if the business does not do well, then I think somebody has to pay the price. Why should bank pay the price? I believe in that thought process. But private equity will pay the price because they are running equity risk with you. And that's the reason it's a good idea. And again, it's a good idea to put some money off the table, dilute yourself, get somebody who understands businesses, who bring processes. I think that's a very important. Private equity, they bring money. You can call it a dumb money, but they also bring processes. They bring support. They have done 20 businesses. They are in the business of making money.
And good governance.
And I'll also,
which is very important.
Maybe take up here. See, what is the role of bank in a project life cycle? See, that is what he has explained at the start point, at the middle point, or at the end point. Banks, they don't take risk. Initially itself, that's why they're giving you a term loan or something on that sort, working capital loans. So naturally, when the business does very well, suppose you move like Infosys, something that does very well, but then do you give me more money? No, you just pay the interest rates only, 12% or 13%, whatever interest rate is paid to us, and no extra money is paid. But when there is a loss, then we expect not just the principal, not just the interest, but the principal also not to be paid. All the problems come up, but they get, they get in the losses. We are unable to get that money. So, here you will say that in your kind of a problem, you will have to go to an ARC, asset reconstruction companies are there, who specialize in this kind of an asset, who will support for the short term in terms that it comes out again, and if they are confident about the idea and about the company, they will support till the time it comes back to the rails, and then the banking system can really take over more onto that. But even otherwise, the banking system many times gives you reschedulements or restructuring, it reduces down the interest rates also. So, a lot of things are done, so which is partly in a way funding the cash losses of the company, which is the banks are doing it. In any case, in the hope that there is a rehabilitation and we will be able to get our money back onto it, some major part of it. Because, as he said, the judicial system, through that we will not be able to recover most of our money. So, it is better to lose some money in the initial stage and give some rehabilitation program and be able to recover the balance. But ARCs are the other type of model which can help you in terms of yours.
So, good afternoon. Myself Mohit Kumar Gupta and he is Tarun Arang. We are law students from Campus Law Center, University of Delhi. Now, being in the legal field, we are aspiring to be entrepreneurs. Specifically, sir, this is question to you, Mohit sir. How about being a lawyer and an entrepreneur? Very important questions for aspiring entrepreneurs. And secondly, field related or sector specific question to the entrepreneurship which has built up into a big corporate houses where the funding could be provided from CSR funds to social projects, because number of people are getting into social entrepreneurship, and there is a particular section in the Companies Act whereby the companies, corporate houses provide funding. So is it a best way to provide funds by corporate houses to social entrepreneurs who can make contribution to the Indian sector?
It's a very interesting question. Let me tell you, lawyers, actually you have two opposing forces, and I think you should identify that first. As a lawyer, I think what do we get trained? We get trained to look at anything, like I remember Dr. Batra said. He said, you've never met me, but you know exactly my business model. I said, because I just done a little bit of research on you, and I know if I can get a research, I can understand what is behind. So what are we good at? We can look at a paper and the right questions will pop up. We can understand the risk issues. That is, we are very good at it. That we can understand, hey, this is the business, this is the risk. And we are also smart in mitigation. So that we can, once we identify the risk, that's like the project finance lawyers do, or banking finance lawyers do. They identify the risk, they come up with a mitigation strategy. That's a very positive thing. When you talk about entrepreneurship and lawyer, that's a very good thing. The other part of the lawyer is, we actually can become very, very, what you call a word, jiddi. We get obsessed with ourselves. We believe we are God's gift to mankind. And you have seen that in last, I think before the last government was voted out, the entire debate on the TV was between 5-7 lawyers. The growth did not happen. The country was going through a mess, but everybody was obsessed with himself and not about the country. Because we have got a nag of arguing when we know we're going to lose. So I think what is important is, and that's a very dangerous trend, because we can believe on anything which is never going to happen. And therefore I think we have to control that bit. We have to be very, very, what we said, Mr. Mittal said, pragmatic, professional, identify the risk, mitigate the risk, come up with the solution. Then you say, this is like typical risk sharing technique is, let the risk stay with the party which is best able to control the risk. If it's a technology or is something which is related to you, you should control the risk, so the risk should stay with. If there is something which you can never control, then the risk should stay with somebody else who can control it. And that is the type of thing you have to do. So this is a great thing. You can do it as long as you don't have to get obsessed with yourself. And therefore discipline is very important. I think understanding, we've done a mistake. I think I often tell lawyers, he said, hey, what do you think about these lawyers being a minister? I said, you know one thing, lawyers are very good. If you go to a senior advocate and you brief him well, he'll be a star. But if you brief him badly, he'll be totally useless. And lawyers are good at who briefs them. And that's a very important part. But Some of us, most of us are not original thinkers. So that's a very important part. So when you are innovative, people in the room are innovators. They are not lawyers. They don't get briefed on a case law. And they say this is a section, this is, and then they come up with an added value. They don't do that. They are the guys who pick up an idea and start thinking about it. Now lawyers typically are not that. We need a case study to come up with a view. And when you look at something, so it's a different thing, but if we actually channelize ourselves well, and if we can understand what we saw as scalability, if we can regulate the risk and do intelligent and be passionate to the extent of working hard, but not be foolish, not over obsessive. As long as we can understand things, I think we have the right thing. And CSR also, I would say corporate houses would prefer to give to people who are lawyers, who understand issues, because at the end of the day, this is a compliance issue. And everybody wants to give it to people who will understand the law, the intent behind the law, the letter of the law. A lot of people in our society don't understand that. They just generally believe everything will be okay, don't worry. Give us the money, we'll take care of it, we'll have this, don't worry about anything else. And then we have all the issues which we have in the society. So I would say we are, sorry.
Yeah.
Hi. Mine is a social entrepreneurship venture. So we started about 2 months back. What we are doing is we are connecting NGOs with the donor and the corporates. So we have developed a web portal, donateitems.in, where you can donate stuff. We have kept cash out of scope, but any items that you have like clothes, shoes, whatever is not useful to you anymore, you can put it there. So it's like OLX, but you are donating stuff, and NGOs registered on the site can see what you have donated and whatever they need. So it's connecting donors with NGOs and corporates. So this donateitems.in site is live now. So I have developed it personally along with help of few volunteers. Now the challenge that I'm facing is that I need to add all the NGOs that we have. So we have procured the database of 70,000 NGOs, and we are adding them onto our database, and we are making them calls and sending them emails that you please leverage from this platform. So my problem is that I don't want to charge NGOs a fee for this, because it would be like getting donations from someone and getting NGO a fee. So I don't intend to make a lot of money out of it, but I still feel it's a very, very useful thing that we will be doing. So I need to raise funding for it to be able to get an office space and have some support staff to be able to scale it. Next, what we are planning to do is we are planning to add volunteers. So if you want to volunteer with an NGO, you could put your data and address other requirements of NGOs, like employee requirements that they have, selling their products, like they make beautiful greeting cards, candles, bags, clothes, etc. And giving them a platform to leverage these CSR funds that are available. But we have kept cash out of scope. So how do I go about getting some basic funding so that we could make this a success? And though it's live now, but through social media, whatever I could do a little bit with my friends have done.
While the idea is noble, it's praiseworthy. You need to build a sustainability model. I'm not even saying a business model, a sustainability model around this. As to how you will get your returns back when you make this connection. That business model, if I may use the word now, that you need to develop, so that in the long term, you are not dependent on these funds repeatedly. Like any investor would like to, okay, once they invest, but they would like to, if not commercial returns, they would like to have their principal back on this. So that business model you need to develop along these lines.
Right. So if we get a lot of eyeballs onto the site, we can monetize it to some extent, like putting ads onto our site or...
True. Yeah. So some business model you will have to develop to make it interesting for the investor to...
So I have
some
bit of that in place.
Dependable business model. This is not a very, dependable business model. Maybe it can come up after some time. But somewhere you need to have some revenue stream to be able to show that this is the basic revenue stream from which I can pay back at least some part of the things or anywhere, and the balance thing will come up from.
So I would need someone who can guide me, some kind of a mentor.
Yeah, we have somebody.
Yeah.
So we have a client for you for
Yeah.
CSR funding. I think that's an interesting thing.
Surely.
I'll talk to you over lunch, sir.
Actually,
Of course, we have CSR funds in the organization, and we'll definitely look into your proposal.
Sure,
You are
sir.
free to send it to us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
and,
for the opportunity.
We'll look into that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
thank you very much. I think we are run out of
My
time.
time.
And thank you very much. I think it was an exceptionally, I would say, interactive session. And I think we should have actually started the interaction much before. But I think, and let's give a big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much.
Very much, Mrs. Rao. What a pleasure, sir. Thank you so very much, and thank you to the panelists, to the audience members for their questions. For those of you who didn't get a chance to ask, the panelists will be joining us for lunch, so let's make it a very interactive lunch session. May I now request Mr. Rajesh Khubchandani from ETH to please join us on stage and thank our panel chair and, of course, each one of our panelists. Gentlemen, may I request you to please bear with us for a couple of minutes and give us an opportunity to thank you with some very impressive soul flowers. A token of appreciation for you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us once again. I know we are all hungry, but let's put our hands together for the panelists nevertheless. Mr. Saraf, thank you. Thank you so very much. And Rajesh, may I request you to please be a part of this photo op as I getting all set to capture the moment.